Hello class and welcome back to another lesson. So I created this little lesson just to help simplify the process of public speaking because I know there's a lot of y'all who want some simple steps to help you prepare your speech, your presentation, your interview questions, or just different communication situations. So these 4 P's can be applied to public speaking, of course, but also outside of public speaking. So this lesson for today is called the 4 P's of public speaking. Okay, let's dive into it. So the first P, which is, I would argue, definitely one of the most important step, and this first step is called predict. So therefore the first P is predict. Now what do I mean by predict? It's just another word for doing your research, doing your due diligence, understand your audience wants, needs, problems, what solutions do they want. Now, with any speaking situation, or for businesses, or for anything where you're targeting an audience, you want to do your research, you want to collect data, you want to predict what could happen at that particular moment in time for your presentation or for your business 10 years down the line. It's all about collecting data. Now, once you collect data, you can have a better idea of what to predict that could happen in the future. Now, when it comes to public speaking, again, think about your venue. Think about how many people are there. Think about what tools are available to you. Will you be using a podium? Will you be using a microphone? How big is the stage? How far will you have to walk on the stage? And then, obviously, when it comes to your speech itself, what jokes or humor would they like? Do they not prefer humor? Is humor your style? What references would they relate to? You want to collect all this data from your target audience as much as possible. And you want to, once you collect the data, you want to have an idea of what should be said in order to ensure or increase the probability that you will do a good job and that your audience will actually thoroughly enjoy what you have to say. So the first step, and very important step, is predict. Do your research. It will save you a lot of embarrassment, and it'll also save you a lot of time, and it'll help build your confidence because you took the time to understand your audience. Once you understand your audience, it is easier to create a product for said audience. So that's the first P, predict. Second P is prepare. Now, once you've collected that data, you need to craft the ideal speech for them. Now, again, this goes back to what I just said. Once you have that data, what humor would they enjoy? What humor will they relate to? What pop culture references will they relate to? Do they enjoy pop culture references, or would they much rather prefer statistics, facts, videos, images, all that stuff? Every element of your presentation, this is where you pick and choose exactly what you want to communicate. And if you want, I would even take it a step further. I would even take into consideration what you should wear, what type of wardrobe you should wear to best allow you to do well. Sure, it's all about, you want to choose an outfit that helps make you feel confident, of course, but you also might not want to choose an outfit that distracts too much away from your presentation, especially if you're using visual aids such as a PowerPoint presentation or audio or video. All those variables matter. Now, again, once you've done the first step, which I would argue does take a significant amount of time, the next step is then you want to prepare, knowing exactly what you should say, what you shouldn't say, what images you want to use, what images you don't/shouldn't want to use, what images might offend your audience members or make them look away, right? Maybe an image might be a little bit too gruesome, or maybe you want to offer a trigger warning. You want to prepare for your audience, and every audience is different, right? Depending on age, ethnicity, social economic situations. Take those variables into account, then prepare for your target audience. Now, once you prepare your speech, you prepare your visual aids, you prepare your outfit if you want. I'll leave that up to you. I would, because I've been doing it for years, and everything, I love having everything prepared because that helps build my confidence, and I know that I thoroughly did everything in my ability to do a great job. Okay. The next step, the third step, and the third P is practice. Now, this is important. If you're a beginner, it really depends on how much time you have to devote to practicing and your lifestyle, obviously. So ideally, practice, it's just you're doing your due diligence right before the presentation. It is about working out the kinks and the flaws and ensuring that you can do a great job on stage. And with any sport, practice is essential. It's hard to elaborate on practice because it's just so important. But realistically, a lot of people don't even practice, which I leave up to you, right? Ideally, I'm telling you to practice, but your lifestyle might not allow for that. However, you want the beauty of practicing is that it helps train you to emulate what you ideally want to do on stage. For example, if you want your introduction to be a certain type of volume, a certain type of reaction that you'd like from your audience, you want them to bust out laughing or you want them to cry, whatever it may be. Ideally, you'd find the perfect words to emphasize. You'd find the perfect moments to take pauses. You would have delivery cues throughout your entire speech, especially if you're a novice. However, it really depends on how much time you have to devote. But realistically, if you don't have much time, which I'm assuming most individuals don't have, you should still at least practice your introduction. That is the first and most important part of your speech. Why? Because your audience's attention is important. And how do you get your audience's attention? It all depends on the first few seconds of your presentation. Because if you don't hook your audience in the first 30 seconds to a minute, they would not want to listen. So the next step is practicing. Because there you can literally break down word for word. You can practice word for word your entire presentation. However, that might not be realistic for y'all. But if you don't have much time to practice, definitely try to practice your introduction first, because that helps build your confidence. When you're on stage, if you have your introductions well prepared, it will help build your confidence for the rest of your speech. However, if you only practice your conclusion and you don't do well in introduction, you're going to lose confidence because it's going to take you 3, 4, 5, 15 minutes to get your conclusion, but by the time you get to your conclusion, your confidence might be crushed. So you want to be strategic with your practicing time. And you also need to understand what particular problems or distractions you might have that your audience might notice. For example, if you have a tendency to swing your legs too often, that's something you should practice. That's something you should be aware of, make note of, and be able to correct that. But ideally, if that's something you want to practice, it's best to be prepared. It's best to know your speech as well as best as possible. Okay, the last step is perform. Now, the reality is that steps 1, 2, and 3 should take up significantly more time than 4, because number 4, all you're doing is just executing what you practice. Now, one thing I love is sports, but more specifically is basketball. And one of my favorite players ever is Kobe Bryant. And if you're familiar with the basketball player Kobe Bryant, he was a Los Angeles Laker, and I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm a little bit biased. But the reason why he's my favorite player is because he spends significantly more time practicing his craft than actually playing the game of basketball. And one thing he'll always advocate is that practice prepares you, and it helps build that confidence for when you are at that big game. So ideally, most of your work needs to be done before you actually step on stage. And this is one thing that a lot of people don't do, hence the reason why you're not confident. And that's why there are a lot of clients that I work with, they say, oh, I just want to be confident. But the problem is that when I ask them questions about their preparation, a lot of them haven't earned their confidence through from doing the research so they can predict the audience reactions, preparing the ideal speech, writing the ideal words, selecting the right images, all that stuff. They haven't earned that confidence. And when it comes to presentations and public speaking, that's one of those things you just have to do. You have to put in the work to earn that confidence. Now, a majority of people don't want that, and that's fair. But I hate to break it to you, but there's very rarely, or I haven't met anyone thus far, and I've met a lot of people when it comes to public speaking who is able to who is able to just freestyle a speech on stage and do a great job without ever practicing and preparing. Those are usually the individuals who I would argue have too much of an ego because they're used to their friends and family telling them they're a great communicator. But they tell them that because when they're with their friends and with their family, sure, they might be a great communicator because they're confident and comfortable then, but that's because of years and years of practice with those individuals. However, when you're performing a speech, you're speaking to strangers. You're speaking to strangers who are wanting to be entertained because that's what the audience is. Think about it. When you are in the audience situation, what do you want? What do you expect? Think about it. When you are sitting in a chair in a room of people as an audience member, you're usually waiting to be entertained. Usually you pay a ticket to go to watch a movie, you pay money to buy a ticket to watch a show or a live event. And usually when we're in that speaking situation, you expect to be entertained. And what happens if you're not entertained? Some people would go on Twitter and just rabble on about how poor that performance was, sure. But in essence, the audience are kind of there to just critique you. Because the reality is, if you're speaking in front of strangers, more often than not, your audience members aren't rooting for you because they don't know you. It's kind of like rooting for a stranger. Now, most audience members are like that. Therefore, it is your responsibility and your job to entertain and provide thought-provoking information to the audience. Now, I don't want to ramble on too much, but these are the 4 P's of public speaking. Number 1, predict. Do your research, do your due diligence, understand what your audience wants and needs are. Number 2, prepare. Find the ideal material, write the perfect speech, find the right images, audio, whatever it may be to help prepare something for your presentation. Number 3, practice. It's very important. Why? Because you should be practicing significantly more than the time that you actually takes to perform. And number 4 is actually performing. It's actually executing everything that you prepared for. And this goes with any speech, any activity. Any athlete will tell you they study the game. They study the game that they're invested in. They study their craft. And they learn about their competitors, their audiences. They learn all that stuff in order to do well in a game. And the games usually last significantly less time than the amount that they actually prepare for. Okay, use these 4 P's, simple steps in theory, and follow these steps in order. A lot of individuals don't follow the steps. They want to jump steps. But I'll tell you this, if you jump steps, you're not doing yourself a service. There's a reason why I put these in particular order, because it should ideally be done in this order. If you skip a step, that usually hopefully the only reason you skipped a particular step is because you're already proficient in that step. And if that's the case, great. I'll leave that up to you. All right, hopefully this lesson was helpful. If you have any questions, just email me. But until next time, take care, y'all.